Bomberman Hero is an incredible 3D platformer made only for the N64 that I've loved my whole life. This game is legitimately one of my favorite platformers in the entire N64 library, and while I can't remove my nostalgic bias towards it when I say that, hopefully this video will help you understand where I'm coming from. Let me stop gassing it up for a second and we'll get into the meat of how this game actually plays front to back. Firstly, the charm presented to the player right from the moment you power on your system is immaculate. We're treated to an opening scene with Bomberman starting in this high-tech operating base before he's quickly soaring through the skies, snowboarding down a mountain summit, exploring the depths of an underwater cavern, and even flying through the air with helicopter blades attached to whatever this ball on his head is. From the opening cutscene alone, we see all these specialized vehicle options with no real platforming to be seen, but as soon as we start the game, we can get the full picture. Let's get the controls out of the way here because they're quite simple. You can run, you can jump, you can grab ledges to hoist yourself up if you don't quite make a jump cleanly, and of course we can throw bombs. Rather than just throwing bombs though, we also have the option to lay bombs on the ground. We can do this while running or jumping to lay traps for enemies within the levels that we'll be playing, or we can even run into a set bomb in order to kick it at our enemies. The part I really like about the bomb laying option is that it harkens back to classic Bomberman gameplay. Laying bombs as traps, kicking them a distance to catch your opponents off guard, it's a wonderful blend of gameplay as they move Bomberman into a 3D platforming environment. There are collectibles we'll be finding through each level that we play through in the forms of these bombs and these flames. You can keep track of how many you have of each in the bottom corner here, and the way this system works is really fun. The more bombs you collect, the more you can throw on the screen at the same time. If you only have one bomb, you have to wait for your first bomb thrown to blow up before you can throw any more, but if you collect up to 4, you'll be blasting away to your heart's content. The second and ultimately most dangerous collectible, the fire, determines how big your explosions are. Collecting up to 4 fires will give your bombs a massive explosion, which in most cases is a really good thing. You can take out multiple enemies in one bomb, or a missed throw might still catch an enemy regardless of your aim because of the explosion radius being so big, but where this becomes dangerous will quickly make itself apparent. In Bomberman Hero, you can be hit by your own bomb explosions, and in many cases, it can be pretty tough to avoid. If you're collecting a ton of these fire collectibles, that just adds to the difficulty of holding on to your life points. It's such a fun system to play around, and of course, I run full risk all the time while playing through this game. The reason it's risky though is because losing health is actually more dangerous than you might think. You don't really have an option to gain health very often in this game. From level to level, your health points will stay exactly where they last were, only resetting if you die or restart your system between play sessions. The way you'll have to keep your life points up is by collecting as many of these heart collectibles as you can possibly find. This life system can be really tough to work with at times, but honestly, there is no penalty for dying aside from losing some of your bombs or fire power-ups, so it only adds a somewhat self-imposed challenge if you're the type to try to beat the game with as few deaths and as many power-ups as possible. Even game overs will allow you to simply pick up from where you left off from, only with one bomb and one fire upgrade to boot. The levels from world to world will become more difficult. Sometimes it's the platforming itself, or the enemy placement, or simply the challenge of getting through one of these auto-scrolling vehicle levels without dying somewhere in the middle. The natural progression of difficulty from world to world feels really good. Some of the boss fights are a little tough to beat consistently, causing you to have to fight them a good number of times before finally moving on, but I think that's a good thing too. What good would a fun and whimsical game like this one be if I was able to blow through it without a single challenge along the way? Speaking of the bosses, let's go over them. Our first boss is this weird catfish looking robot who attacks us with lightning. The first phase is hitting him with bombs while trying to jump over these turning electric beacons, and the second phase is simply dodging his electric orb attack while landing our bomb throws in his face. Boss number 2 is an interesting one because it's a boss that we'll be using the helicopter vehicle transformation for. You basically just have to dodge a couple things and drop bombs on his head to beat him. Not really that tough. Boss number 3 is really tough for me to beat, but mostly due to these falling blocks that are extremely difficult to react to every time they're dropped on you. You have to hit this Sphinx directly on the diamond on his face. Then when he brings out his shield, you have to work your way around him to hit his tail, and when his shield is finally dropped, you'll once again have to hit the diamond on his face. And the way this boss moves around takes up so much space on the battlefield, it can be really hard to work around. Beating him requires a decent bit of patience and some amount of luck, as these blocks in his final phase are kinda just mean. Boss number 4 is a boss in 2 parts. We have this giant spider robot and a cat lady jumping around the arena. The cat lady only needs to be hit once to disappear, and the spider bot has to be hit directly in the eye to deal any damage. Not so bad, but once we deal with the spider bot, the cat lady comes back with a vengeance and serves to make this fight 2 times longer. I like this boss fight a lot. Even if the sloped floor and the weird camera makes it a little harder than necessary to aim your bomb throws, it's just a creative second phase that no other bosses have in this game. The 5th and final planet in this game serves as a bit of a boss rush. rush, but more than that, it's actually a bit of a boss remix at the same time. Boss number 1 now has an attack that electrocutes the entire surface of water that you're fighting him on. Boss number 2 is fought on foot rather than flying in the air, causing you to have to find openings on him in a more natural boss fighty way. Boss 3 is now fought underwater, which makes things really difficult as the gem on his head is still quite hard to hit accurately, and you have the added challenge of dodging these missiles the whole time. Not to mention, you can't just swim forward forever either. This underwater arena is quite small and only allows for a small segment of moving forward before you need to start swimming backwards as well, adding a whole new difficulty to the controls of this fight. Boss number 4 is actually separated into 2 completely different fights this time around. The first fight is the spider robot with the eye, and he's now fought in this lava area. He pops out in different spots, fires lasers and missiles at you, and requires a swift hit to the eye to be taken down. It's quite a fun shake-up from his original arena. The cat lady, now in her own fight, would usually attack with a whip or throwing knives depending on the distance that she is from you, but in this case she actually brings a doppelganger into the fight. Now fighting 2 of them, they each stick to one type of attack, and when they're hit by bombs, they suffer a good amount of time without being able to attack you. It makes it pretty nice in the way that you can just pick off whichever one has the weapon that you struggle to deal with more, while avoiding cat lady number 2, and then taking out the second one on her own once the first one's already been dealt with. The final boss in this game takes 3 phases in one fight to defeat, which can be hard with the regular 4 hit points you have to work with. Firstly, we have to fight him on foot. He dashes around, he sends out purple flames towards you in 3 directions, and is overall just a little tough to hit with the way this camera forces you to aim your bomb tosses. In his second phase, he sends his consciousness into a flying TV screen accompanied by some fake TVs that look identical. 2 of them are fake, 1 of them is real, and you just have to hit the real one about 5 times to move into phase 3. Honestly, I've never taken a hit of damage in this phase, and I'm pretty sure it's because the fake TVs can't actually hit you with their attacks. There were a few times I was pretty sure I would have been hit by their electric attack, and I just wasn't. Regardless, moving into phase 3, we do have a pretty tough fight. The TV head moves into this big robot, and we have to take out his arms while this overshield is covering his face. This part isn't really that bad. Dodging the missiles as well as his cannon shots are as easy as running an outside circle around him, but the second part of this phase is where it gets tricky. Once his arms have been blasted off, he'll start sending out more missiles than before. This would be pretty easy to dodge in the same way as before, but we can't afford to run an outside line anymore due to the fact that now he's equipped with a giant cannon shooting purple lasers our way. We now have to run around him as closely as we can to stay ahead of this cannon while also not taking any hits from these missiles, and that's much easier said than done. Overall though, this was a really sick final battle from a game that is generally so chill and laid back otherwise. Planet 5 being a whole boss rush of remixed boss fights is really creative in my opinion, especially when getting to it for the first time. I assumed it was just going to be every boss I'd already fought, but again and all in a row. Overall, the platforming gameplay is amazingly fun, the vehicle selections are a good break from the normal gameplay, and the boss fights really had me excited the whole way through. I've played through this game a good number of times in my life, and I'll continue to play it through more as time goes on. This one is just a true classic for me. If you like content covering old video games, and more specifically old N64 titles, do consider subscribing to my channel. Or you could just click one of the other videos coming up on screen now. I'm sure you'll like whichever video you click on as much as you liked this one, so give it a shot. Until next Friday, that's my time. My name's Myloe, and I'm out.